Hey guys, welcome back! In the 80s and early 90s, playing arcade video games was the perfect way to choose the next game for my ZX Spectrum or Amiga. So, here's my 26 all-time favorites that I still play on my main arcade cabinet. Let's take a look. Back in the 80s and early 90s, arcade games were always the storefront of my future pickups. I would normally rely on my own judgment about their overall quality and by the feedback from players right on the spot. Let's face it, in those glory days of the arcades, owning an Atari 2600, a ZX Spectrum, a Commodore 64, an NES, or even an Amiga or Mega Drive Genesis wasn't quite the same. The hardware and software innovation was always side to side with arcades, and it was in those dark and obscure places that we could find the best that the video game industry could by then deliver. So, despite all the cigarette smoke that infested these places, here's the 26 arcade titles that made me spend all my lunch money back in my teenage years.
Number 26.
This 1988 beat-em-up was where I fell in love with the genre. Vigilante was exactly what I was after in a fighting game. I was never a fan of the Street Fighter series that had its debut a year before Vigilante, and never had the chance to try the very first Renegade on the arcades. By that time, many action movies were all about martial arts and kicking ass, basically. And I was after a similar experience on a video game, and Vigilante offered the chance to fight our way and save our kidnapped girlfriend, Madonna.
Number 25.
In this vertical scrolling running and futuristic title, we have to fight our way through 7 levels, defeating a boss in the end of each one. So, where's the novelty in this? Beats me, I just love the frenetic action, the awesome weapons, and the superb soundtrack that rocks the place down. So awesome!
Number 24.
By 1996 I was all over the PC and the PlayStation, and most of my local arcade saloons were closing its doors. One of my latest experiences at the arcades was with Metal Slug, the very first one, and I was blown away by the characters' animations that were among the most incredible I've ever seen on an arcade game. It grabbed me right there, with also the awesome music and graphical quality, despite the slowdowns, cause there's so many stuff happening on screen at the same time, just like in those bullet hell shoot 'em ups.
Number 23.
My favorite puzzle video game to play at the arcades and later at home on the ZX Spectrum and Amiga. So many coins spent with plotting, trying to get through all those levels that can sometimes really mess up with our brain. And that's a good thing, a really fun and addictive little game from Taito.
Number 22.
Already mentioned on my top ZX Spectrum games episode, Enduro Racer reminds me of pulling the handlebars to perform some wheelies and asking my friends to hold the cabinet steady, otherwise it would fall on me cause the cabinet when I used to play it didn't have the seat. Enduro Racer places us on a dirt bike trying to beat all the 5 stages, avoiding rocks and other riders, and the wheelie stunt is extremely important while jumping. That way we could avoid crashing into those rocks and maintain our momentum. Just good old days.
Number 21.
One of the most hilarious games I've ever played at the arcades. So, Joe and Mac have to rescue a bunch of kidnapped cave girls, and their journey is filled with comical situations, making this title so entertaining and highly addictive. We have to fight our way through these prehistoric places filled with dinosaurs, carnivorous plants, and rival cavemen. Such an amazing setting with gorgeous graphics, sounds, and a catchy prehistoric soundtrack.
Number 20.
What Cadillacs have to do with dinosaurs? I don't know, but it was based on a rather successful comic book named Xenozoic Tales, set in a post-apocalyptic future that spawned the not as successful animated series from CBS. And concurrently with the animated series, Capcom released an arcade video game that glued players to the screen with that so much action going on in those beautifully detailed scenarios. And 3 players could simultaneously beat the crap out of enemies and also engage the dinosaurs that inhabit this hostile alternative future.
Number 19.
My very first experience with a driving game in a proper and dedicated cabinet. And its soundtrack still pounds so freshly in my mind. Taking our blonde girlfriend for a ride in our brand new Red Stallion was something quite unreachable back then. It still is, I guess. Outrun was the obvious evolution from Sega's own Hang-On that used its superscalar technology to allow back in 1986 that awesome 3-dimensional effect at 60 frames per second. An outstanding achievement.
Number 18.
Ever wanted to turn someone into a snowball? Here's your chance to do it! So, in this game we control Nick or Tom that fires snow to the enemies, turning them into snowballs. Then we simply have to push those and try to take down all the enemies in just one go to gain some huge bonuses and instantly advance to the next level. This is one of those games that we must play in co-op mode. It's so freaking amusing!
Number 17.
Ninjas were really popular by the end of the 80s and Ninja Spirit just kept that flame on going. So, in this one, we have to avenge our father's death by hunting down this weird-looking nutcase, and to accomplish that, we have at our disposal a pretty decent arsenal. There are 7 stages across ancient Japan, with temples, swamps, cliffs, wastelands and forests, with an overwhelming mystical tone, set also by this captivating and inspiring soundtrack. Now that I have a TurboGrafx 16, I must try and grab this game for that system, cause it got 10 out of 10 and it's considered by many the best title for that platform.
Number 16.
Everyone wanted to blow stuff up, just like in those one-man army movies so popular in the 80s. In Cabal, you can do just that. Kill everyone in sight and even destroy every building on screen. A totally new thing that players never saw before. 2 years later, in 1990, Blood Brothers grabbed that same concept but in a western environment and brought again that huge demolition fun that tells the story of two blood brothers, a cowboy and an Indian. Weird? Maybe. Just don't think about it and keep on shooting.
Number 15.
This one has got one of the most memorable scenes ever on a video game. My very first encounter with Stage 1's amazing boss. What a spectacle! Back in 1987, this was something quite unique that was miles away from everything else. Also, and only many years later, when I had the chance to play it at home using MAME, I've listened to its sounds and music, cause alongside with the R-Type cabinet was the really loud Tetris. So, while playing R-Type, I was completely involved with this tune. And what about Tetris with the R-Type soundtrack in the background? Nah, that just doesn't work at all.
Number 14.
Do you recall seeing Daytona USA for the first time at the arcades? I remember walking in this brand new place that had opened its doors a couple of days prior to the arrival of this new standard for racing games. It blew everyone's minds in every technical aspect. No one had ever seen something so realistic, and if I wanted to play it, I had to wait in line because it was the new sensation and everyone wanted to try it out. And I believe that it was the smoothest video game ever, maintaining a consistent 60 frames per second with so much stuff happening on screen at the same time. In this game we simply have to outrun the other opponents and complete the race before time runs out. That's it. But the speed at which things happen, the beautifully detailed and fluid graphics, and the exploding environmental sound was what Daytona USA was all about. I also wanted to pay a small but special tribute to the pinball frenzy that were always contiguous to the arcade cabinets and as well a source of extreme fun. When they weren't broken, that is.
Number 13.
Everyone wanted to be a badass cowboy and ride off into the sunset, just like in the end of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade movie. Well, here's your chance to do it with Sunset Riders. Filled with humor, action and dynamite, we have to dodge raging bulls, frightened chickens and really trigger-happy bad guys. Fortunately, that their bullets travels really slow, otherwise would be dead in an instant. This one was the Red Dead Redemption of the time, in where we played the role of a bounty hunter going after some tasty rewards, and for that we must defeat the main outlaw that is waiting for us in the end of each level.
my brother?
Number 12.
If I'm not mistaken, Double Dragon was my first experience at the arcades. I was 12 by then, and I recall that the popular arcade in town, closest to the school I went, was just a 10-minute walk. And I also remember to see, contiguous to the Double Dragon cabinet, other fantastic titles like Outrun, Enduro Racer and R-Type, but don't know why, and in that precise moment, those didn't appeal to me that much. I guess that being in a different school and with new colleagues inspired me to learn some martial arts stuff, just in case. Double Dragon was the follow-up to Renegade, other astonishing fighting game that I only played on the ZX Spectrum, and our goal is to rescue Marion that was kidnapped by the Black Warriors gang. So expect a lot of punching, kicking and elbow attacks.
Number 11.
Every single one of us have already heard the story about King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. So, with Knights of the Round, we had the chance to play the story in this sort of action slash and role-playing title, where as we progress, our playable character will upgrade his weapons and armor. So we have 3 playable characters to choose from: Lancelot, Percival and Arthur, the main protagonist that pulled out the sacred sword Excalibur and have now to slay the evil King Garibaldi. Similarly, with Golden Axe, we can ride animals, in this case horses obviously, that we can use to also ram the enemies.
Number 10.
Now, here's something quite unique back in 1988. An arcade title licensed from a UK-based computer game company, Ocean Software, that held the rights to create a video game based on Paul Verhoeven's blockbuster movie. And the Ocean guys were smart enough for letting Data East come up with all the concept and design for the game. I remember coming down to one of my favorite local arcades and be hypnotized by RoboCop's demo mode, with its mind-boggling graphics and digitized speech.
Serve the public trust, protect the innocent, uphold the law.
I'll forever remember that. So if you've watched the movie, that is one of my favorites ever, you know what to expect. Lots of criminals to shoot and the inevitable confrontation with ED-209 enforcement droid unit. One advice: don't waste your ammo. Make every bullet count. And the sound effect that the gun compartment on Robo's leg makes is just awesome.
Number 9.
The Outrun formula continued to be explored, and Chase HQ is the proof that it can be applied to other stuff rather than simply drive from point A to point B or around the circuit trying to get the best time in each run. So in this one, we played the role of Tony, a police officer experienced in car chases and high-speed pursuits, whose job is to hunt down these criminals on fast escaping vehicles. And the most gratifying thing is to ram their beautiful and expensive cars and make them stop on the side of the road. Curiously, our mighty police car doesn't suffer any kind of damage. Isn't that great? Yeah, bring him on!
Okay,
You're under arrest on
Number 8.
With a premise as simple as drinking a glass of water, Midnight Resistance places us in an alternative future where we must rescue our family from the hands of a weird enemy. But what's really awesome about this game is the frenetic running gun action and the ability to shoot on any direction. And don't forget to pick all those keys, cause you'll need those to get all the firepower possible to keep on going and accomplish your rescue mission. I simply love this game's setting, the level design and the amazing and superb soundtrack.
Number 7.
It was my first experience with a 4-player arcade video game, and that's not just one more video game. It's one of the greatest titles ever made for arcades, and seeing all 4 turtles in action is so overwhelming and looks like if we're part of an episode of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated series in which the game is based. So, we have to rescue Splinter and the lovely April, and for that we have to fight our way through hordes of foot soldiers and face the Turtles' worst enemies, Shredder included. It's still, for me, the best Turtles video game ever.
Number 6.
Everyone on Earth played Golden Axe. Even the alien creature did it! It's one of the most fondly remembered video games ever, and also one of my first experiences in a DOS machine equipped with VGA graphics back in 1990 at school. With this amazing artwork and backstory that somewhat reminds me of the fantasy medieval scenario of Conan the Barbarian, we must guide our heroes across the besieged land of Uria, slaughter the main villain, Death Adder, free the king and his daughter, and gain possession of the Golden Axe. Looks simple, but Death Adder's foes are tough and have some of their own moves up their sleeves. I can't simply recall other video game available till that time in where we could cast magic spells, ride dragons and fight skeletons, all this on the backs of a giant turtle and of an eagle. Brilliant.
Number 5.
Now, here's my favorite beat-em-up video game ever. And it has to be played on a real arcade and with a proper arcade stick. Amazing level design, amazing sound, amazing music, amazing ambience. Everything is amazing in Final Fight. As I said before, I was never a huge fan of one-on-one fighting games like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, where the player is confined to a kind of ring, but those sort of side-scrolling beat-em-ups were my thing back in late 80s. I need to have a purpose in a video game to keep me focused, and again, in Final Fight, we simply have to save Jessica, the daughter of Metro City's mayor. Final Fight was hugely influenced by the astonishing Streets of Fire movie from 1984 and suffered from a bit of controversy when it arrived in the US, but I'll leave that for another episode.
Number 4.
What an awesome evolution from the original Shinobi video game. At least that's what I think. And Shadow Dancer is, without any doubt, the best title from the Shinobi universe, and the best version is this precise one. The introduction of the attack dog was a feature that blew my mind. The possibility to send our best friend in front, scouting the terrain, simply added a bit of strategy to this action-packed title. But please bear in mind that if you take too long to kill the enemy being beaten, your most beloved friend can be hurt and turned into a puppy, leaving his master on his own for the rest of the level, or when he disables one of the many time bombs scattered throughout the level. In the end of each stage, there's the usual boss confrontation, in where we are unable to rely on the dog's loyalty, so we're on our own again. And the train level, in which the train itself speeds up through the city, is so awesome and keeps the adrenaline levels really elevated.
Number 3.
Aliens is an arcade exclusive game, meaning that we can't play it on any other platform. And it's one of the best alien-based titles ever made. Believe me, it's brilliant. Inspired on James Cameron movie from 1986 with the same name, Aliens let us play as a female marine exploring this abandoned space settlement. Between all the hordes of alien creatures that we must destroy, there's also survivors that we can try to rescue. So, in this shoot-'em-up title, we have to pay extreme attention, cause the creatures appears from the multitude of directions, and the lift level is, in my opinion, the most terrifying one, cause the nasties can cut its cables, sending us to our bloody death down the shaft. It may have a similar gameplay to many other shoot-'em-up titles, but the atmosphere created around it and the obscure place in where I used to play it bring so many incredible memories of high intense moments trying to beat it.
Number 2.
I always wanted to travel the world, and Pang is a great opportunity to do just that in less than 30 minutes. And while exploring these 17 locations, why won't we save their landmarks from being squashed by these giant balloons? That's exactly our mission. Save those 17 cities and locations by destroying these bouncing balls and balloons. There's a lot of hidden bonuses to discover, a few different weapons to use that requires a bit of strategy according to the level and number of balls that are still pumping around, and it was one of the most enjoyable two-player arcade titles available by the end of the decade. Another super addictive and coin-swallower video game that is still one of the most played on my main arcade cabinet.
Number 1.
The minute I saw the intro of Toki, I was immediately glued to it. The adventure, exploring the unknown, the exotic locations, the underwater level, everything just attracted me like a giant magnet. The graphical beauty, the characters' animations, the music, sounds, everything just seemed to be perfectly synchronized in perfect harmony. 1989 was the perfect year for the arcades, with so many original titles and new and fresher ideas to old genres that were becoming boring and quite repetitive. And Toki was just that, an amazing experience set in an astonishing, vibrant, mysterious and colorful new world in where we played the role of Toki, that was one of the victims of the wrath of this wicked wizard that casted a spell upon him. Now, in his gorilla outfit, Toki has to travel through these treacherous places infested by raging animals and weird-looking beasts, defeating the wizard and rescue his loved one, Princess Mayo. A fabulous adventure that everyone should experience. As you can see, and if you've watched pixelthing episodes about my favorite Amiga and ZX Spectrum video games, many of these titles are also featured in both those top 26 lists. Sadly, by the end of the 90s, with the changing of player status and the fast and swift technological advances, arcades were completely overtaken by PCs and home consoles. So guys, these were the 26 titles that crafted my youth as a gamer, during a time period in which I also and simultaneously experienced gaming on the ZX Spectrum, Amiga, Mega Drive and MS-DOS, besides others that I didn't own, but had the chance to try at friends' houses like the Sega Master System and the Super Nintendo. If you haven't already checked, please click and watch my other top 26 lists for the ZX Spectrum and for the Amiga, and don't forget to comment, like, share and subscribe to the pixelthing. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next week.